If you want to succeed, you'd better get on with people. He said, because that's all we've got around here. And one of my favourite quotes, I love quotations because I think they are distilled wisdom, is that from Alexander Pope, the great poet, who said, the proper study of mankind is man. And you will find that people who succeed in businesses spend a lot of time looking at people because that's where the money comes from. So I used to do a little quiz. I don't often do quizzes with people. Say, what do you think is the world's most favourite sport? And people say, oh, it's soccer, or it's tennis, or it's golf. Or I say, it's not. It's watching people. There's a guy I worked for. Before I started my own agency. I worked briefly for the Franklin Mint. And the Franklin Mint was an organisation that invented the idea of creating things for people to collect. How did this happen? It happened because the guy who started it was watching people, I think in Atlantic City or Coney Island, buying souvenirs. And he thought people love to collect things. And then he started this business of limited edition collections, which is, there are many firms doing it now, but he did it first. And then he started another business selling stuff on the internet. I can't even remember what it's called, but he made millions and millions and millions. So yeah, if you want to start a business, study people, try and see what they want. Human beings love to think that they're doing something important. So we're doing a rebranding. Well, you're an idiot. If you've got a brand that works, don't mess around. This is rather like, if you've got somebody say, I know you and I recognise you and I recognise your voice and we get on well, why should I want to change you? Do you think that all of a sudden it'd be a good idea if you grew your hair like this? People wouldn't know it. Sometimes people waste money on things that cannot possibly make any difference. As Leo Burnett said, you do not know until the product is offered under normal conditions of sale. What does that mean? It means until you've tested it, you don't know. Until you've gone out and you've said, okay, will you buy this thing? You don't know. And one of the problems is that people are kind. There are two problems. Number one, people themselves don't know. And number two, people are kind. They don't like to say to you, that's a bloody stupid idea, Drayton. Yeah? So you have to test, and you have to keep testing. Testing is the only, well, we'll quote Claude Hopkins, the most important chapter in the book. The answer to every advertising question can only be answered in one way: conduct a test. All I did was study and make mistakes and be very, very passionate is a terrible word to use, but I was certainly very, very determined. I remember when we started our own agency, I'd gone broke in a business. And when I started my own agency with partners, they were younger than me, 1979. I said, you know something, to you, this may be a wonderful adventure. I said, but to me, this is the real thing. If I have to walk up and down Bond Street strangling people, this is going to succeed. You've got to be very determined. But I was very determined very early, and I made a lot of mistakes. I recommend making mistakes. Tested more different options before I even tried to launch them. I think you have to test on small numbers before you launch to see whether it's going to work or not. So you eliminate the possibility as far as humanly possible that it might go wrong. And sometimes you just conclude, this is a crap idea. This is a lousy product. It's never going to work. That happens. Most products fail. Most products fail. In terms of, usually you're in a situation where you're not coming out with an entirely new product to an entirely new audience. You're normally in a situation where there's a product that exists, that is being sold, and you're being required to produce something better. Well, the answer is to test. You've got to test. If you have the time and the money, then the answer is to go into research first of all, then test. Taking things that do not seem obviously to be connected and putting them together in new ways. Yeah. That is the act of creation. Yeah? And it's the act of creation in business, it's the act of creation in writing, in anything. Yeah? In anything. And it's not what a lot of people think now. People think that being creative is, let's go away and have a wacky idea. Let's think of something, let's go and smoke some hash and whatever. Yeah? It's nonsense. The act of creativity is very, very constrained. You have to work to a formula usually. Mozart, the great composer, wrote, I think, 27 symphonies, all to the same formula. Haydn wrote not over 100, all to the same formula. If you read, there is a very good book, I don't know whether you've heard of it, it's called Nobody Wants to Read Your Shit.
Oh yes, Stephen Pressfield.
Well, what does he tell you? He says work to a formula. Almost everybody that you read, they don't say go away, you know, they say this is hard, you've got to do this thing, you know. So if you're starting a business, well, somewhere in one of my books I quote somebody who said, find out what people want and need and give it to them and you'll get rich. What does that mean? It means you must spend a hell of a lot of time studying people if you wish to succeed, is to be conscious of your inability. You've got to learn and practice, and not just practice the thing that you think you're an expert in. If you're sitting in a room full of copywriters and all the other people are copywriters and you know all about business and they don't, you're in a very strong position. If you're talking to a client, the client's not interested in copywriting. No client wakes up in the morning normally and says, wow, I really want to know all about copywriting. What they want to know is, how can I make more money? I just read a lot more than other people, so normally speaking, if somebody came up with a problem, I knew something that might solve that problem. The next thing that I think helped me a lot, a desire to do better and to take a chance based on that desire. I may not have thought I was wonderful, but I knew I was wonderful enough to do better. And I knew I was wonderful enough to turn down things that I didn't think were good enough for me. What is the difference in any of these things except speed? Just speed and the ability to do things on a larger scale. So let's take R straighten. So we find that by analysing the current R straighten member, we can go to Facebook and get similar people. 50 years ago, if I had a list that was doing well and I compared it with another list, if the duplication was above a certain number, I knew that new list would work. Nothing new. So I would advise people, study principles, not technological change. Understand technological change, but please do. But understand that techniques may change, but principles do not change, people do not change, ways of selling do not change, nothing new. And if you understand these things, if you have a bedrock of knowledge about these things, then you're in a much stronger position when you're trying to solve a problem or start a business or run a business. The more you know, the more you can do. About infomarketing, that people are infomarketing, that they're selling information. And I call it misinfomarketing mostly, because I always think, can you show me the great things you did? I very rarely hear that they're an expert in this and expert, and I was like, I never see what you did. What did you do to become an expert? You said, I'm an expert. And you said, I can teach you how to do so and so and so and so and so and so, and I'll make you rich. And in the 18th century, one of the great writers of all time was Dr. Johnson, who wrote the first English dictionary, the first good English dictionary. No, he said two things. He said, promise, large promise is the soul of an advertisement. Now that was said 250, 60, 70 years ago, yeah? And all these people who are selling you, I'll make you rich, what are they doing? They're making big promises. And the promise is so big, and the promise is so alluring, and the promise is so exciting, and you're so eager to get what you want that you think, and they've given a big guarantee. Big promise, big guarantee. Forget the promise, forget the guarantee, and say, can I see some of the stuff that you've done? Can I see some of the stuff you've done? You don't see it very often. They've done one or two campaigns and they're geniuses. What I've done is I've made a lot of mistakes. That's what I've done. This is from one of these people who's going to make you rich. Copywriters aren't born with that ability. It's something anyone can do. All it takes is an open mind and the willingness to apply a few simple tricks of the trade. What fucking rubbish. What fucking rubbish. What do you mean a few simple tricks of the trade? Bullshit. There is no proper trade where all you do is you need an open mind and you can be a carpenter. Yeah? You can be an architect. It's rubbish. What's happened online is a tidal wave of big promises backed by very little substance. You've got to have risked your own money, lost your own money, made your own money, made your mistakes. That's what you've got to have done.